Hi, and welcome to a new episode of IT Conversations. We're live in Barcelona still at VMware Explore 2024. And this is kind of a special video because we're not just walking around, we're actually sitting down. And we are in I think, a really awesome place. We're at the Virtually Speaking podcast studio with two of my personal favorite VMware folks in the world, John and Pete. So, Pete, let's start with you. Welcome to IT Conversations.
Yeah, man. We're doing it live, baby.
We're doing it live. So, you've been a guest before.
I have been.
But
yes.
We're going to talk about something completely different now.
Yeah, absolutely.
First of all, how is Explore?
Wow, VMware Explore, man, it's amazing. You know, we do it in Vegas, we do it in Barcelona, and it's been a lot of fun. There was a lot of questions, when the acquisition first happened. Is like, what's going to happen to VMware Explore? Is it going to happen? I think everybody understands now. It's still amazing, and Hawk's fully on board. So it's been a great week for us. I mean, lots of great announcements. We've been having conversations all day, nerding out with the tech community, with partners, customers, anybody with a good story. So yeah, it's been a great week for me. What about you, John?
Really cool. Yeah. So John, let's talk about those conversations.
So a couple of things that I noticed. There's certain trends that I always see when I come here, and there was another trend that I'll say that's actually been really fun to see, and it's very different than normal. So one of the trends is when I come here, I always say the Europeans are smarter because I get much more technical questions at much deeper depth here. Like, people want to go based on more than just like, how do I configure it? It's like, okay, how does this work? They want to understand, okay, not just how do I configure that, why do I get through? They get to much greater depth than I get in the Americas for whatever reason. So I'm not going to say the Europeans are smarter, but it is. I definitely get a smarter question. The other trend is historically when I talk to large customers, and I've talked to large customers, they're generally, and they'll ask me about features, ask me about things, and I'll say, well, what version are you on? Because then I can say, what they can do with that or what they need to upgrade to. And what the refreshing trend is, instead of talking to large customers here, and they're like, well, I'm on, this almost out of support version or something like that, or, I've still got 5.5 or something horrific. I've talked to, one, a lot of people are running VMware, VCF, and two, I'm like, what version of VCF? And I consistently hear, I'm on 5.2, I'm on 5.2.1, and it's like, well, this stuff just came, and people are actually, they're getting up to date, and we've been talking about lifecycle for a long time, and it's like, wow, this is the validation, this is real. So that is my other trend that I'm noticing that's pleasant, that everyone is patching. Please go out and patch, Love your, hug your children, pat your dog, patch your servers. It's happening. So
We are very mature, apparently. And we're proud about that. So let's talk about a guest. And this can be like a shameless plug for the podcast. Obviously, we are a big fan. Our team is a big fan. I listen basically every episode, especially around the conferences, because you guys are, having interviews with a lot of really interesting guests. So what are some of the highlights you had so far?
I really enjoyed the conversation we had with the National Health Service out of UK. It was really refreshing. There was some AI discussion, but there also was just some very practical, disaster avoidance and other conversations. Encourage people to listen to that episode. Pete, what was your other favorite conversation?
Probably one of my favorites was we had we spoke to the cloud service provider partner manager here. Guy was amazing, talking all about the things that they're doing, how the possibility for data sovereignty always is such an interesting topic to me, and then just to see how some of the things they're doing with data sovereignty and AI, which I thought was pretty fascinating. One of my favorite though is we spoke to a bank from France. I forget the name of the bank, but my favorite part of that interview.
Le Bank.
The bank, yes.
No, Le Bank.
Bank de France. No, I forget the name. No, but the best part about the interview was they had so many people in the interview that I had to leave, and John got to do the interview. So that was fun.
I'm not naturally a showrunner, but it was interesting hearing them talking about the challenges and availability, and it was interesting. One thing I caught from them, they were talking about the continuous availability of operations, and I always thought of monitoring as okay, that's a tier 2, tier 3 resource. My monitoring can be down for a day and no one dies, but increasingly with some of the compliance and regulatory, or just the importance of it, monitoring is now a tier 1 application. It has to always be up. It has to survive a site failure. And them talking about the engineering work and making sure that happened and being able to manage it. Also the shift, one of the interesting things I got from them, and go listen to the full episode, but there's very much a shift on focus of like, oh, let's get these operational tooling out there. Let's have a bunch of pretty dashboards that we project on the wall, and we have people just staring and turning their head quickly. And instead moving to a framework of like, let's get the alerts right, and then the alerts drive what we look into and how we troubleshoot. And finding ways to reduce alarm fatigue. They had some creative solutions and customization in that regard that was good to hear.
So one thing is really cool. Have you guys taken a look at the hands-on labs yet?
I haven't seen them. We've been interviewing like all day, so I have not gotten over there. I did go look at it in Vegas, and I got to watch some great demos at the VMware booth. Miles Gray was doing some fantastic stuff on Tanzu, of course, and so yeah, seeing some of the demos, but I have not had a chance. It's one of the downfalls for me of doing the podcast, because we do so many good interviews that we don't get to. There were times when I was a customer, I would come and actually just be able to do all the labs, which is one of the better benefits of being here, is being able to do that.
Yeah.
They're guided, there's help there.
And experts.
You got the experts.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a really great experience, but it's certainly one of the trade-offs when we're stuck here. We can't do that.
Well, what's really cool, and that's a big shout out to the Hands-on Labs folks, is that the thing you just mentioned, like how you need to be in control of what happens in your infrastructure, spin up workloads, like at certain peak times you need be aware of what's happening in the infrastructure. They're doing that here.
Oh yeah, the operational
very live
dashboards
as well.
they have. Yeah, you get to go see all of our operational tooling, monitoring the lab and watching them spin it up in different clouds or different regions or different clusters, and watch them in real time. They're the ops people. They have an ops desk that's reacting and managing stuff and watching it. It's amazing how smooth it goes, especially because I was a lab captain once. I built a hands-on lab, and like, oh, there's an issue with that, and they helped me in real time troubleshoot a problem. I think it was a cert or something I forgot to make sure I got, or a password expiry. But like they're able to redeploy that and get that back out. And
It was DNS, right?
It's always DNS.
It's always DNS.
Yeah. So, Pete, your role, both roles are not full-time podcast host. Would be awesome, but it's not the case. You are also, from a tech marketing perspective, responsible for a couple of things. Amongst them is VCF, when it comes to creating content.
Absolutely.
So, a lot of buzz was around VCF 9. Let's talk VCF 9.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to start?
All right, so I'm on the storage side of the house, and the thing that I'm obviously most excited about is vSAN, but there's some other areas that are pretty cool. So some of the stuff we've been talking about, some of the capabilities they've announced, focusing on global deduplication. When we went from OSA to ESA, the deduple implementation, if you worked with the original storage, it was limited default domain, so it wasn't necessarily as efficient. We're doing a lot of work there. There's going to be a lot of talk about that. There are also some things that are improvements on stretched clustering, which are not big in my part of the world because everything's over 5 milliseconds away in Texas. But I think 5 milliseconds probably crosses 4 borders for y'all, and dark fiber must be free or something.
It is.
It's wild.
I have it at home.
So some interesting in terms of manual takeover and capabilities. There's some things people have been asking us for. There's some presentations on. Also some intent in terms of improving some of the disaster recovery. So we've already launched with 5.2.1. We have the ability to do local snapshots, local protection. But obviously, if you're going to have a backup, you're going to have recovery. You need to be able to send a copy of that somewhere else. So they've been doing some showing some of that in some of the sessions and previewing where we're going with 9. The one feature that's actually in tech preview now, but it's part of the 9 release we're going for, is memory tiering. Yes. And this is something, if you're on a customer, you might only buy hardware every couple of years. You don't stare at the price of memory as much as our great partners here. But when you start looking at memory and you're like, oh, well, that's only $5 a DIMM, but oh wait, I want the bigger DIMMs. Well, those are 10. Wait, these are €20. What's going on with memory pricing?
Yeah.
And you start filling out these hosts. You're paying maybe 20 cents a gigabyte for memory. And you start looking, it's like, wait, that's 70-80% of the cost of a host potentially if you max out the max specs on one of these hosts. And you look at the price of NVMe and you're like, well, that's,
cheaper,
30 cents a gigabyte or less. And like, wait, well, let's go use some of that. So intelligently using what we do well as a hypervisor, looking at the CPU, looking at the memory and saying, okay, this looks like a memory leak. Let's just go slam that over there. There's been some sessions that I know we had one in Vegas. Brandon Frost did a great interview talking about he put databases on it and was able to maintain 90% of performance and getting half of his memory tiered off.
Wow.
And so for those of you who are home labbers, you've probably been looking at some of our solutions saying this stuff requires a lot of RAM to build like a full nested VCF instance. That requires hundreds of gigabytes of RAM, and I can't put hundreds of gigabytes in my NUC. Well, now you can go buy a terabyte card, and I feel like I'm downloading a terabyte of RAM or something silly, but you shove that in and you post up ESXi, and it says you have all this RAM. So this is a cool feature because one, the high-end customers are going to use it to do exotic things within memory applications and scale them more. I think your more boring pedestrian enterprise user will say, let's take my tier 2 micro applications, let's enhance that trash compactor and double the density of my host. Bring me my memory leaks, bring me your applications that my app users demand unreasonable amounts of memory. Fine, whatever.
The Excel sheet from hell.
Yeah. Let's do that. But also the home line, like everybody gets to use this feature, and there's some cool stuff they're looking at for CXL cards, and there were some demos. There's stuff, Project Peaberry, other stuff I'm sure you've probably talked to Duncan about.
Yep.
That is something that the cost savings potentially on that is going to help you make your home lab feasible. It'll help your tier 2 applications, enterprises. It'll pay for your VCF licensing because RAM is just egregious at scale. And your high-end users and your exotic users, it's going to help them push, tier 0 in-memory applications and databases to new insane extremes. So I think it's a fun feature because everybody is going to have something to do with it.
Really cool. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised he didn't mention the enhancements in vSAN with snapshots, but
we're working on stuff.
Oh yeah.
yeah. As well, VCF import is another great one that's out there. It takes us back to the fact that we were talking to one of our VPs earlier, and he made a really great point. And I'd love to share it about VCF. When VCF first started, it was really more of a we have all of these components: vSAN, compute, storage, networking, automation, all that stuff, and they were always separate. And bringing them all together, initially was more of like an aggregation of some sort, but it was still separate things trying to work together, and that's not always the best way to do things. And just there's been a lot of redesign with these things, not only from a human resources perspective in terms of focusing. We're all under the same boss. We're all focusing on the same code to be released at the same time, so that things are going to be they're going to work better together. But also from an engineering perspective, right? And so even like the imports are going to be working completely with NSX. There's never going to be the situation where it's like, oh, you have to wait for this version of a certain piece of software. Oh, that doesn't work. vSAN Max came out. Oh, but it doesn't work on this version of VCF. Things like that. So having that aggregation, everybody not only from a human perspective working under the same tier, but also from an engineering perspective. So that's a big enhancement. Dual DPU support was another big one for us.
You presented about that, right?
We're presenting on that tomorrow. Actually,
with Dave Moreira.
Yeah, with Dave Moreira. Nice. So that's going to be another great session. If you're here, by all means, swing
this
by.
This is live, so
we'll do it live.
Be sure to check out Pete's session.
Yeah, demystifying DPUs and GPUs, just talking about how to use these things and how to manage those internally from a vSphere perspective. So, really cool.
So one final question. Did you guys eat some hamon yet?
I have had so much hamon.
Yeah.
I always say I do go on the special diet of just water and low sodium and vegetables as the run up here, so I can just embrace the hamon and the papas bravas, and the food is excellent. For anybody who's on the fence about coming to the show, I always say just go to Barcelona. Even if you're on the eastern seaboard of the U.S., it's probably about the same flight time ish. It's well worth it.
Yeah. So the very final question. Anything you're looking forward to this week? Any final words to mention? Any shameless plugs?
Well, sure. We'll start with the shameless plug, obviously. Virtually Speaking Podcast, vspeakingpodcast.com. We do our best. John and I started this a long time ago. As you mentioned, it's not our day job. We did this out of a passion, because we're not the smartest guys in the room, but we like to talk to the smartest guys in the room and gals, and we like to learn. And so we're more curious than we are, anything else. And so learning, which is something I encourage everybody to do in the community, is to continue to learn, continue to work together as a community, blogging, just really working together. I think the passion of the VMware community has always been one of my favorite parts about this job, because it's more than just the tech, these are jobs, but this is also a whole part of life that I'm excited about. Happy to be part of it. I'm so thankful that you're part of it, and I thank you for chatting with us today.
Awesome. You, John, any final remarks?
I'll say my shameless plug. You can follow me on Twitter, lost_signal. I have a podcast I occasionally update, thenicholson.com. But just there's so much to learn here, and I encourage people, it's impossible to attend all the sessions, but go back and look at some of the recordings, go back, break that stuff down. I was having to fill in for another presenter, and I was like having to, rapidly, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of stuff I missed in the last release. So, it's fun.
Really cool. Well, thanks so much, guys, for being a guest on the show. Enjoy the rest of the week when it comes to the Virtually Speaking podcast, but also meeting up with, with guests, sessions, all sorts of stuff. Well, to you, like this video, subscribe to our channel, listen to the Virtually Speaking podcast. We'll be sure to send out a link beneath this video to the podcast. For now, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.